Hello friends, my name is Fandral, and today I want to talk about Dragon Response missions. DRMs are part of the Icebrood Saga and are soloable instances that you can also complete with parties of up to 5 players. To start one of these missions, you'll have to go to the Eye of the North, go through the Azura Gates and select whether you want to fight one of Primordius's or Jormak's champions. Originally, these missions left a sour taste in the mouths of many players, because when they were released at the time, they were somewhat of a rushed way to finish the Icebrood Saga storyline. But if you take a step back and appreciate them for what they are, they're actually not a bad time investment. And once you know how to run them efficiently, they become quite profitable. The first clear of the day with 2 challenge modes enabled nets you around 2 to 2.5 gold. And with most missions taking somewhere around 10 to 12 minutes, the average gold per hour of these is 11 to 13 gold. If you do them without challenge modes, the profit falls down to around 1.3 gold per run, but the runs are slightly faster and you'll get an average of 7 to 9 gold an hour. This is also one of the rare cases in the game where farming the instances can still be worth it, even after the first clear of the day. Your average gold per hour will then be 10 gold per hour with 2 CMs enabled. It stands to argue though that without CMs, this won't be the best time investment. Now, let's take a look at what these missions entail. In the footage, I'll be playing solo in a private instance, but if this is your first time, feel free to join a public instance. Please do note that you cannot enable challenge modes in public instances though. Every mission starts the same. There will be a pre-event that you can do for a morale boost. This boost gives you 5% stat bonuses per stack, and you can get up to 3 stacks in total. The pre-events are timed, and usually you have around 5 minutes to complete all of them. Sometimes when you're soloing, this can be challenged to do within the time limit, but don't worry if you don't complete all 3 of them. Finishing these is not a requirement for a successful DRM. Most of the events follow the same formula. You'll need to rescue NPCs, which is pretty easy, as you can go talk to multiple people at a time, mount up and then just rush back to the safe zone. Usually you also need to kill a set amount of enemy mobs, and as a third objective there's usually some interacting with an objective around the map. All of these objectives will be displayed on the minimap, so if you're not sure where to go to, just check the minimap and you'll know instantly what to do. If you decide to enable challenge modes, the first thing you should do when you're entering a DRM is talk to an NPC named Veed. He usually stands around near the start of the DRM and will allow you to enable 3 CMs. These will decide what type of reward chest you're gonna get at the end. 0 CMs is a bronze chest, 1 CM is a silver chest, and 2 grant you a gold chest. You don't need to enable a 3rd CM unless you're going for specific achievements. There is also a second NPC which you can pay off with Tyrian defense seals, which is the mission's currency, to get help from certain factions. I usually forgo this as they're not really needed, and spending your seals this way will eventually eat at your profit. As for the specific CMs to enable, enabling the timer is always a safe bet. If you don't wipe, the mission will be over with quite a lot of time left on the clock, so this becomes somewhat of a free challenge mode you can enable once you get acquainted with each instance. Whether you want to enable stronger foes or final boss depends on the enemies you'll be facing. In general, the list I'm putting here up on the screen is the list that I tend to go for. When stronger foes are active, please note that normal enemies get Aegis and 5 stacks of stability, so crowd controlling them will be a near pointless effort, as they'll most likely be dead by the time they're stunned. Final boss makes the boss at the end deadlier, but if you're somewhat doing mechanics correctly, this shouldn't be that big of a deal. In general, you always want to crowd control the boss when a break bar is up, and make sure you avoid the telegraph's attack. Once you've chosen whether to enable CMs or not, and have done the pre-event, each of these missions follow the exact same formula. There is an escort event, followed by a champion that you will need to kill. Often, killing the champion is done in 3 or 4 phases, with a mini-event in between. Escort events are generally disliked by most players in MMORPGs, and I'm one of them. But this is where I might have a bit of good news for you. If you play the Scrapper builds that I posted this week, you'll have access to infinite super speed. And the NPCs from the escort events can be sped up, making them run at near mount speeds. So if you're playing Scrapper, this becomes far less cumbersome, and cuts down a good chunk of time to complete the overall instance as well. I personally don't switch builds around anymore when I'm fighting the final boss and just go on the same scrapper builds in my general open world gear. I was even running superior ruins of the Zephyrite in the footage shown here, just so I would give longer lasting super speed to the NPCs. If you're fighting the bosses for the first time though, it might be worth swapping to builds you're comfortable on to solo champions with. These champions are on the power level of champions you might see in core Tyria and are nowhere near as difficult as the ones in the Heart of Thorns, for example. So don't let that gold border around their picture scare you too much. I am planning to release a series where I solo each DRM with tips and tricks later down the road. Doing this all in one video would take 2 hours and would be a nightmare if you wanted to look up a specific tip for a specific DRM, but you can expect these down the road. Now that we know what spec I run and why, and what CMs to activate, there is actually one more important aspect to go over: understanding the reward structure. I already mentioned that the general rewards are based on the amount of challenge modes you enable at the beginning, but there is more to it. Your Dragon Slayer mastery will impact the rewards you will get. The gold per hour numbers I mentioned earlier, they assume that you have the mastery track completed. If you don't have these yet, don't worry though. Doing DRMs is actually a really great way to finish the track. There are points of insight you can channel within the instances for an easy mastery point, and the different achievements tied to them tend to reward you with masteries as well. The next important thing to note is that you can get extra prismaticide rewards from doing these missions. You might already have noticed that when you finish a DRM, you get a buff and one of the hands of your character starts glowing bright orange or blue. This is the buff that you get for killing a champion of Primordius or Jormak respectively. You will get 0 prismaticide for having no buffs active when you kill the final boss, 1 if you have a matching boon type, 2 if you have the opposite boon type, and 4 if you have both buffs active. An easy way to get both of the buffs at the same time is by running Dragonstorm before you start the DRMs. Dragonstorm doesn't take too long, you get really good rewards and a tiny chance at a very expensive infusion. But more importantly, it also grants you both champions buffs just for finishing it. And as a final note, sometimes there is a reward for running 3 daily DRMs. You can check this in your achievements tab under the daily category by navigating to Daily Icebrood Saga. And before I end this video, I want to give a quick overview as well on how you should or could spend your Tyrian defense heals. These are the currency you'll be accumulating from doing DRMs as well as Dragonstorm. If you want to finish achievements, of course go for these first. There is also cosmetic infusion you can purchase for 600 seals, making your character look like a stone statue. But if you want to know what the most profitable way to spend these is, the fast farming website has you covered as per usual. You can buy supply boxes from a discount vendor as well as a normal vendor, and usually you get around 50 silver to 1 gold of profit per box, or 3 to 4 silver per seal you're spending. And that's about it for this video. As mentioned, I will make a video per Dragon Response mission with some tips for faster and more efficient clears, but for now I already wanted to direct your attention to the fact that these aren't so bad to run and could be a nice source of income. If you have any questions or remarks, make sure to leave them down below. If you liked it, please like this video, and your subscription would mean the world to me.